Hello, welcome to Careers in a Crunch. I'm your host, Ajit. The goal of my podcast is to explore many different paths that people have taken to get to where they are in their careers. As a high school student myself, I know that it can be really difficult to figure out what you want to do in life. So on this podcast, I talk to people from all sorts of professions, hoping to hear about their stories about their professional journey. Today I'm joined by Ajit Dogra, who works in finance. I'm really excited to learn more about what he does, how he got there, and what advice he has for students just like me. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm super excited for this interview.
Thank you for having me, Arti. That sounds like a awesome endeavor that you have taken up, and I'm sure this will be a very helpful resource for all your fellow high school students as they think about their career path in the coming years.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess we can just start. Okay, so my first question is, can you start by describing your current role in finance and what your day to day looks like?
Sure. So I currently work as a managing director at a global investment bank, and my day-to-day job as part of investment banking team that I lead is to help advise the clients on capital raises as well as help them with the strategic advice as they think about buying or selling parts of their business or acquiring another company. So it's multifold, the day-to-day responsibilities. As a managing director, I'm responsible for maintaining those senior client relationships and make sure that I'm in front of them with some new ideas or potential other companies that they can acquire, or if they have a financial need, if they want to fund a large project or they want to fund additional growth in parts of the businesses, or if they want to get into a new region, how would they go about raising that capital? They can always use cash that they have on hand, or in that case, they don't need investment bank to help them. But oftentimes, they need to raise more. They need to borrow money from their lenders. And what we can offer as an investment bank is give them help them with raising that capital through debt markets, which is when they're borrowing money, or they can raise it if it's a public company through equity markets, which is where they are selling additional stock to the investors. And these investors can be people like you and I, as retail investors who have their money saved into these managed broker accounts where we want to buy stocks as part of our investments, or it can be institutions like a Fidelity, T. Rowe, Wellington. These are large institutions that have pools of capital available from people who have invested in it, and they look to deploy it and lend that money or invest that money into company stocks. So it's multiple things where you get involved as an investment banker, and it's been a journey. It's been a quite an interesting journey for me personally because I took upon investment banking as a career about 18 years ago or 17 years ago, coming out of business school, and joined an investment bank, and then continued to sort of grow. You start off as an associate if you graduate from business school, or if you graduate from an undergrad school, you join as an analyst, and slowly through the ranks you grow over the years and become and your job profile changes as well, which I'm happy to discuss in more detail as you grow through the ranks. But hopefully that answers your question and gives you some idea about what I do.
Yeah. And you were saying you can go into more detail. Yeah, I'd be happy to hear.
So yeah, maybe I should touch upon a little bit about the how the job changes, right? So what's probably most relevant as you, Arti, and your fellow classmates think about careers after high school or as they think about going into universities, right? So you will go get an undergraduate degree. Typically, the kind of skills that are required for being a successful person in finance and investment banking are people with good attention to details, solid understanding of accounting, corporate finance, how businesses operate, how do they make money, what are the sources of capital for them, how do they use it, how can they compete with their peers, right? So a lot of those aspects become important in this job. Typically, you start off, as I said, as an analyst at an investment bank after your undergraduate degree, and what you would be doing, your day-to-day job would be preparing presentations. You'd be preparing Excel models, financial models. You'd be preparing some marketing materials. And these are used for a variety of things, right? So you'd be working in a small team of 3 to 4 people. So team spirit, what you learn in school, working on group projects is important. Being able to prepare presentations which are accurate, do your research, having that attention to detail is very important. Hard work, of course, because it's a competitive industry, and and somewhat unpredictable as well, in the sense you have to see what's happening in the broader market, broader environment, and that dictates how you want to prepare your presentation. So you need to be very current with current affairs and study the macroeconomic environment as well. So a lot of disciplines that sort of all converge. So while people think of investment banker as a person who's a finance guru, it's not just being a finance guru. You need to really have good marketing skills. You need to have good presentation skills. You need to have good team working, being able to work in a team environment skills. You need to be sharp. You need to have good attention to detail. And you need to have a level of diligence and hard work and a rigor that you are used to. And frankly, as you're going through this car sales school system, and I'm sure you'll all go to great universities, you'll have a very good skill set or rigor that you'll go through, which will help you in this job.
Yeah, your day to day sounds super eventful and really interesting. And as you were mentioning all like the skills, yeah, definitely something that I guess we learn. So one of my questions, sort of kind of going off of the last one, was
Mhm.
um you mentioned that you went to business school and then after you decided to start your journey in financing, but what inspired you to pursue finance?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. And one of the things I would say to, if I could rewind the clock and go back to my high school days or my undergraduate days, is 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 always have, don't be rigid in how you're thinking about your career path. It's always good to have a preference, meaning I want to pursue a certain field because mathematics interests me, because I enjoy physics, I enjoy biology, right? I enjoy living sciences, um, or I enjoy arts, right? So it's always good to have a preference and an interest and pursue your goals and passion that way. But don't be so rigid, meaning if there are some opportunities, be open to exploring things, and as you explore, you'll evolve along the way. Why I say that is it's something I have gone through. So in my high school, I was very interested in science. I was very interested in physics, and mathematics were two of my favorite subjects, which led me to engineering. So I went and got my undergraduate degree in mechanical engineering. So after that, I enjoyed it so much, I pursued a master's in mechanical engineering. So I was an engineer, through and throughout. And once I started working right after my master's in mechanical engineering, I worked as a supply chain consultant, so focused on operations, focused on factories, how to run production schedules more efficiently. So I worked as a supply chain and operations consultant for a number of years after my engineering degrees, and I enjoyed that a lot. But over time, it evolved, meaning I felt that I understand the engineering side of things, how things are made, how things are built, how things are made efficiently in a most cost effective manner. What I didn't right fully appreciate was, how does a company, how does a business operate? How do they make money? Where do they borrow? How is it all managed? There are sales and marketing that are involved, which I was not part of as part of my day-to-day job back then. So that's what pushed me to expanding my horizons, and this is exactly what I meant by don't be rigid. And I evaluated, maybe I should go to business school and learn a little bit more about finance, about marketing. And I went to Chicago, University of Chicago at that point, applied for business school 5 years into my job. Along the way, I got married as well. So it was helpful when Smita, my wife, was at that time working with GE Capital. So one of us at least was working, and I got the luxury to go to business school and relive my school days. But following that, when I studied finance, I enjoyed it thoroughly. It really opened up my thinking, and I was able to marry up the analytical approach and problem solving skills that I had learned during my engineering days, and I could see how it can be applied and extended into finance, accounting, marketing. And I came across this investment banking career path, talked to a lot of people at business school, and figured out that this is something which I am actually quite interested in and passionate about. So when I started in investment banking after business school, I didn't have a plan that I'm going to stay here for 2 decades at that time, but I wanted to give it a shot for 3 to 5 years and see how things go. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. And when I said early on that the job in banking evolves, I truly mean it, because when you start off as an analyst, your primary job is to, as I said, prepare Excel financial models, prepare presentations, work in your teams, work for your MDs to make sure that all their requirements are met as they're preparing the client presentations. But then you move up the ladder, you become an associate. Now you have a little bit of a team management responsibility as well. So you're working with your analysts, giving them guidance, and you have obviously been an analyst for 3 years now, so you have a lot of experience to help coach them. And then as you move up the ladder, you become a vice president. And once you become a vice president, then you are executing transactions. So what I mean by that is, if company A wants to buy company B, besides preparing all the financial models and presentation materials, board materials for helping your clients with those with that analysis, you also have to lead the team and make sure all the committees are give you the approvals that you need. So you have to do a certain series of steps and make sure you lead your team to walk through those steps. And that's what the job of a vice president is, to make sure everything is done properly in a timely manner. And then after that, it becomes a little bit more of a sales job. So next step after VP is typically a director or a managing director, depending on sort of where you are. And as a managing director, your job is to give advice to your clients, win business from them. So you get mandated. And as I said, it's a competitive industry. So you have 10 other banks who are also vying for that same business. So you have to compete and win that business. So as you can see, the job evolves from doing analytics to preparing materials to giving guidance and coaching people to executing transactions to actually then ultimately winning business and then helping make sure. So as a managing director, you are responsible to win business, execute, get the right team to help you, and ultimately get the results for your clients.
Yeah, I think it's super interesting how it like the job incorporates so many different things throughout like the different sort of like levels of, like the job. And you mentioned that first you were a supply chain consultant. Did
Mhm.
you learn did anything that you learned from sort of doing that help when it came to like finance and like for your current job now?
So the very different job. Both are very different jobs. However, there were some common threads, and it's a great question, because was I was preparing for my interviews during my business school for applying to the investment banking jobs. One of the things I often pondered upon, because I was asked that question multiple times by different banks that I recruited with, is what in your prior experience is something that you can bring to the table and extend it, right? So outside of obviously the core learning that I'm getting from my MBA, right? Core skills in corporate finance, accounting, strategy, management. What do I bring from my previous supply chain consulting job? And I think as I explored that a bit more in my head, couple things stood out. One was, in consulting, it's a client service business. So you're working with clients, your customers, who you want to win mandates or business from. And it's no different from what you do in investment banking, which is, again, you're constantly competing with your peers, other banks, to win business from the clients that you serve. So, and ultimately, once you win the business, you have to work as if, right, give clients your priority, make sure their requirements are met. So that client service nature of the job was common. The other thing I would say is, in supply chain consulting as well, it gave me a very good perspective into how business operations actually happen. And why that became important in investment banking is, when company A buys company B, they typically look for, the reason they buy it is because, one, it can be multifold, but a couple of main reasons are, one, they see this as an opportunity that if they were to own that other business, they can actually operate it more efficiently. They can make more revenues. They can generate more sales, and they can profit more, because they can sell more goods at a cheaper cost with less number of people, because it's now a combined business. So think of it as, I take the lemonade stand analogy that is very famous amongst high schoolers. If, let's say, you're operating one lemonade stand, and you see another two lemonade stands, and you want to buy them as well. So for each lemonade stand, there needs to be a kitchen in the back that actually helps, buy lemons, create the lemonade, and then get it to those lemonade stands. But if you have multiple lemonade stands, you don't need multiple kitchens to handle those, right? You can have one central kitchen that makes those lemonade and distributes it to all three or four lemonades. So what does that do? This kitchen can now buy in bulk. They can buy more lemons, so they can get a discount because they're buying so much. Two, they're using less number of people to make the same, because whether you make one jug of lemonade or five jugs of lemonade, I think the effort required ultimately starts to be sort of more efficient if you're making in bulk. So companies do the same thing, and those kind of appreciation for how these strategic M&A, mergers and acquisitions work, and where the efficiencies come from, that part I learned in my supply chain consulting days, and when I firsthand saw those operations. So working in investment banking, I had a different deep appreciation for where those cost savings, where the revenue growth can come from when two companies are merging together. So yes, I think those were, I would say, a couple of things which actually helped me a lot in applying my prior
Yeah,
skills to the banking job.
that's like really interesting, how and this I really like the lemonade analogy. I feel like that fits perfectly. Um One of my next questions is, when you applied for your job, did you have a specific vision or goal that you sort of thought of or wanted to achieve, and has that changed over time?
So I'll take the example again for finance, which is my current job, right? So when I applied for investment banking out of business school, I mentioned that my plan was not to spend 2 decades or make a full career out of it. At that time, I was really looking at 3 to 5 years out. That what am I going to achieve in the next 3 to 5 years? So at that time, my goal was, I've just learned the corporate finance, accounting, and marketing and strategy skills through my MBA. Came across a lot of great people, built a great network of friends, and I wanted to really make the most of my next 3 to 5 years in applying those skills and see where it takes me. Over time, as I grew through the ranks, I found it exciting because this job actually, evolved quite a bit. Right? When I first started, we were in the midst of global financial crisis in 2008 in investment banking. So I don't know. I think you're probably too young to have witnessed some of that. But basically, what happened in 2008 was a number of investment banks actually had to be bailed out by their respective governments, or they were forced to merge with other banks because there was a deep financial crisis which would have led to failures of these banks. And it was an interesting time, and how you work with your clients back in that environment versus when the environment was a bit more stable, versus when you have different political sort of leadership, that impacts how the economic environment would be, that impacts how the consumer is feeling. So right now we have witnessed in the last 2 3 years a lot of inflation. So when these external factors change or evolve, the type of decisions that your clients, investment banking clients, take, and how they raise capital and what type of strategy they adopt changes as well. So right now, as an example, I cover packaged food and beverage company industries, and in those industries, there is a big theme you might have heard about: MAHA, Make America Healthy Again. So there is a big push to eating healthier, and that's becoming more mainstream than it has been. So for many, many years and decades, a lot of food companies have continued to sort of continue to evolve their product set. And health has not been, I mean, taste has always been a focus, because if food doesn't taste good, nobody's going to buy it. But the focus on health was probably a second or third priority for them. But now that's coming back to be a priority item for most food companies. So as a result, how that impacts my job now is, when I work with my clients, the type of businesses they want to buy are companies that make healthier products, or how can they improve their products, right, that they're selling. So yes, the job changes, and that dynamic nature of this job actually kept me excited about continuing to work in banking, and one thing led to the other. Found it as a quite fulfilling career. You along the way make good money as well, which is ultimately part of the goal as well to working. But it's a fascinating career. You come across some of the sharpest people, set of minds, and you're competing with people. So it is a competitive industry. but the nature of the job evolved. So to answer your question, when I first started, I started with goal of 3 to 5 years, which extended to 7 to 10 years. And once I made managing director, which takes typically about 10 years after business school, uh, once I made that, then your job completely changes to becoming a more of a sales job, and you're interacting with the C-suite of various companies, the board teams, and it's a very fulfilling. While competitive, it keeps you on your toes, but it's a quite fulfilling career. So I enjoy doing that, and I've been doing that now for last 7 years as an MD, and I highly encourage
Yeah.
classmates, you to consider seriously business or finance as a path, and it's quite fulfilling.
Yeah, very amazing, very nice. You've mentioned that you have like your clients. Have you ever faced like challenges when it comes to maybe your clients making decisions about their business?
Yeah, the challenges that come in this job are, a couple different things that I would highlight. So one, I think I've said multiple times that it's a competitive industry. So let me just double click on that. Uh, there are at any given point, you know, just like my sort of job at UBS, and as I think about other investment banks that do the similar job, there is at least 10 other institutions that have similar or better or slightly worse capability, meaning that they can serve the same clients, and they have probably very similar access to capital markets, and they have probably very similar access to potential targets that this company may be interested in acquiring. So what you bring to table is, when you're trying to win that business from this client, you need to put your best foot forward, which is why the pressure comes in this job, which is you want to show that your firm is dedicated, it's committed, you have the best team, and you'll do everything that it would take in order for your client to be successful in whatever their goal is, whether they're raising capital or acquiring another company, that you will be sort of you'll be the best advisor. And that competitive nature actually makes it. I mean, that's one of the challenges you face every day. Every time you're preparing pitch materials, client presentation materials, they have to be well thought out, and we know it's competitive. And if there are 10 banks, chances are you'll win one in every 10 deals. So it sounds like 9 times you're failing and one time you're winning. And that's actually not bad. If you keep winning 1 out of 10, you're getting your fair share of the market. So you just have to have that drive in you to be okay with losing 9 times, but learning from it and making sure that you do continue to win one, maybe 2 times in every 10 pitches that you make. So I would say that's probably the biggest challenge. The other thing, which is sort of more team, is oftentimes the job requires you to work late because, as I said, it's competitive, it's client service. So if your client wants something to be done by Monday, you find that out on a Thursday. It's an important deliverable you have for Monday, which means you have to work the next 2 days, and you may have had some weekend plans, but you have to sort of put your client first, focus on getting that work done, and hope to make that missed trip that you were planning for this weekend some other time, right? So you always have to be prepared, to be willing to sometimes give up your other plans. So it's just a competitive, because of it's a competitive industry, and it's a client service business.
Yeah, it definitely sounds challenging and competitive, like you said, but like having like the drive, as you mentioned earlier, like is definitely important to keep it going and like making sure, like you said, you win at least like 1 out of the 10 times.
Yes, yes, exactly.
And going into sort of advice, what is some like advice you would give to high school students who are still like unsure about what they want to do with their career?
Yeah, that's a good question, I think, to end this discussion. So first off,
Yeah,
thank you again for having me.
of course.
But the one advice I would give is sort of going back to the point I made about don't be rigid. If you're not sure, it's totally fine. In high school, I'd say three things. One, things evolve. The environment that you're operating in, the business environment will evolve. The consumer macroeconomic environment will evolve. So don't be rigid with this is exactly what I want to do, and I just don't want to look at anything else. I would recommend that everyone sort of be open-minded, explore things, and learn. And it's okay to try something, and you don't like it, pivot and switch to something different. So approach with that mindset of not being rigid, but always have a preference. If there is a passion, if something you like, then that's great. Follow it. And the second advice I would give is always be always give your 100%, meaning don't do anything half-heartedly, because it will show, no matter what your career is or path you choose, or what area you want to explore. If you're not giving your 100%, it could be either because you don't like it, or you're just not committed to it, and in that case, right, chances of success just materially come down. So if you want to be successful, whatever you're doing, do it with your 100%, and one thing, good things will come.
Yeah, those are two great pieces of advice to end off the interview, and thank you so much for sharing your story.
No, thank you for having me. All the best.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye. That's it for this episode of Careers in a Crunch. If you found today's conversation helpful and informative, be sure to share it with a friend or family member. Don't forget to follow the podcast so you never miss an interview. Thank you. Bye bye.